Hello and welcome to Warblog. In this video, I'm going to introduce the Battle of Vukovar, 1991, Croatia. Not very happy with the layout, position, etc. Maybe a quick insight. When you look at the Google thingy-bob, it gives you all the sort of bump, etc., etc. To be quite honest, you just don't know who writes these things and whether or not there are multiple people putting things in, in sort of orders that don't make a lot of sense. I'm not saying that's the case, but I haven't read this thing through and through. But you starts off with phase one, and it shows you this map. So you start to think, oh, okay, phase one. That's this, isn't it? That's phase one. That's the map for phase one there. So that's got to be the first phase. So I based my map around that, thinking, because I hadn't really sort of looked at it, thinking, well, this must be the before position. And then as you scroll down, it's got phase two, November 91. So you think, oh, okay, well, that must be this one. When in actual fact, they're the other way around. This was it before. So they essentially take Vukovar, and then once they've taken Vukovar, they start to push forces further out. And then if you look at this, this was the final line. So essentially, my map is actually good for the full program, but for the actual Vukovar action, it's pretty crap. So if you look at map 2, which is sort of what I want to cover, if you think of that, what I might do is just do it again. So I've got that as a full width map from there down to here, obviously like that, and then you get more hexes. So if you think about the hex size, one unit's that big. There'll be 1, 2, possibly 3 hexes across there. You can actually a little more involved. Where currently, well, to be quite honest, these are the only 3 hexes that are important. I've put an objective on that one, just simply because it seems fairly significant and it gives some objective, some sort of direction, so to speak. The only reason I'm sort of not particularly keen on this is, and I've sort of written this in the description. Let's look at this because this is what I based it on. It's sort of got these units of the 18th. If you look at that, it's motorized and it's a brigade. Now a brigade is pretty big, so I've given them brigades. So let's just look at a brigade. Well, this pretty much is a whole brigade. Basically, the brigades are broken down into regiments, and so there are 4 regiments, each with 3 battalions in them. So that gives each unit, let's look at the map again. So let's consider this tank unit, the 211, which is a brigade. So I've given them 4 regiments. Now I know that's generous, but I've done the same for the Croatians. So they get 4 regiments of 3 battalions. So that's 12 units. That's a lot of units. It doesn't really sort of specify whether it was part of them or some of them. So basically, I have followed this map pretty much to the T with regards to the sort of specifications. Only when it comes down to north, it's that division. I've just given it another brigade's worth, because if you sort of look through this, I'm pretty sure that the Serbs totally outnumber the Croatians. And also, it only specifies essentially JNA forces, which is the Yugoslavian People's Army. There's no specification on here for the TO, which is territorial units, and there are basically Serbian insurgents And these are the people that sort of, to some extent, took a more active role, because they were the ones that sort of went in and did the dirty work of a lot of the street fighting. Got an interesting little video that I might actually include in the what's details the whole war. So what I'm sort of getting to is, I think if you base it on the sort of the order of battle on this is, they're just going to get stuffed, and the scale is not quite right. It's not going to take long to sort of force a whole bunch of odds against this stack and get a good die roll and move them out. So pictorially, graphically, it sort of gives you a brief idea of the layout for that day. You've got some troops. Now what I've done, I've also included artillery. I haven't really got to grips fully with the whole scenario, but when you sort of read it, it's sort of from the top, which is, we'll be coming back to this. I lie, in theory, but it sort of details. This is about as far as I've got really. It took place in 2 phases. From August to September was the first phase. That's how long it took them to surround Vukovar. Basically, they're talking about subjecting the Vukovar and neighbouring villages to daily or near daily artillery and mortar fire. During July, the JNA and TO began deploying in large numbers across eastern Slavonia, surrounding Vukovar on 3 sides. Heavy fighting began. The Croatian forces shot down Yugoslav G2 Galeb fighter, two of them, with their shoulder-launched anti-aircraft missiles. So essentially, just to recap on what that means on here, you've got lots of artillery. There's quite a lot of it. I think that each one of these is 2. No, there's 1 artillery battalion there. There's also 1 there, and there. That's quite a lot because they're worth 9. The Croatians also have artillery, which is sort of on top. It's none of the artillery specified on there. So, and they also have a lot of this. So this means they can do artillery duels. And I might repeat this a few times, but I'm going to definitely revamp the artillery process to sort of almost separate it from everything else. I mean, I won't go into the details now, but I think I'm going to make it more like the insurgent process, where you can actually specify what you're going to hit. This means that you can actually fire into a huge stack like there, and not on its own, and not have to get the odds. It doesn't work like that. You should be able to sort of hurt that unit with artillery, and the fact that it's got massive, if I was to put all this in one stack, it shouldn't be harder to hit. I think I've gone through that. But anyway, so I'm going to change the way artillery works so that it becomes more useful to actually just exchange artillery, and I think I might even include counter artillery, counter battery fire. That's all, down in the pipeline, to be quite honest. But we've also got a lot of the air defence units here, and they're quite strong, and that's basically to sort of like try and take out a few of these planes. I'm not sure how effective it will be. So essentially, it's a giant game crammed into a 2 smaller, ill-focused map, I think. Although, to be quite honest, the way it's laid out there seems okay, but all this space is lost. All the action is going to take place in this little rectangle. I didn't know really how this sort of trailed out, but I've sort of done it like this. I think the objective for the Serbs is to basically cut through here, forcing the units back so that you can end up at the end of the day with this sort of line. So, and that is New Star. So if you look at that, get the right map. At the end of January 1992, they end up with this sort of front line. There's New Star there, but it's sort of from there it goes backwards and up, down. So that's New Star, backwards and up. So basically, maybe you could put that unit deploying there, but so they form this line along there like that. That's a sort of nub. So they're obviously trying to basically push down this way, cut through here, which is not going to be difficult, is there? I mean, look at that, there's only 3 units in there. It's not going to take long to do this. And then to surround this place, Vukovar, and to take it out. To be quite honest, I don't feel like playing it just because there's too many units. I mean, just to put it into perspective, this is not the full deployment. So if we go back to this map, what you'll see here is that it's got from 30th. So this northern division, this southern division, they don't come on till 30th, but they do come on. So you get all these troops. Now the 30th is basically define that as being 8 turns away. So what we got here is each turn is half a week. So 1 week represents 2 turns. So we're talking, proper sort of strategic thingy-bobs. So one thing I quite like about this game, but I understand it would be sort of a bit viewed a little strangely, in that the time scales and the physical scales are, they're not specific. They're sort of very flexible in the sense that they don't make a lot of sense in some circumstances. But anyway, I don't want to go too much into that. I mean, basically, it's all abstract. So I'm happy to remain abstract in even the most absurd sense. But basically, there's 2 turns represent a week. So after 8 turns, which is sort of 4 weeks, which is a month, you get these units on, say September, and then from October, which is 16 turns, you get the 18th motorised brigade. So these units come on in September, 2526. So you get a whole ton of extra units that come on. I mean, if you think that, if you look at this, it's got a fairly even battle, but they just stream on, and I just don't think that it's really going to sort of pan out. Now, again, just to sort of give the Wikipedia article a bit more credit, I haven't really read through it all. I'm still trying to sort of figure out what happened here, but I think, hazarding a guess, I think part and parcel of the problems was the nature of street-to-street fighting. I have been sort of reading through a lot of this, and I'm not going to struggle to find what we've got in here, but basically they had a lot of problems actually getting troops. I mean, it's not, I'm pretty sure it's not in this Wikipedia article, it's somewhere where what they were saying is they found it very hard to get troops. 150,000 people that were called up, they fled the country. So the Yugoslav army called up 150,000 people. Well, they basically called up all the reservists and their army, and 150,000 didn't turn up. And it was down to a lot of the hardcore Serbs, which we haven't even included on here, but I'm not going to include them because I'm assuming that they're sort of integrated with the forces that we got, because there's just so many of them. But they were more nationalists, and they were fairly lawless as well. I mean, obviously, this whole Balkan War is famed or notorious for its ethnic cleansing. I'm not entirely sure exactly what happened where, but I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of ethnic cleansing going on sort of in this sort of scenario. And yeah, it was a very difficult sort of war, but the Yugoslav army couldn't muster their own troops. A lot of them fled. A lot of units basically abandoned their equipment. There was one situation where a tank driver drove his tank all the way to the Yugoslav parliament and parked it outside in protest, saying he wasn't going to fight the war. Wherever you can find that, that's the other bit where it says about 150,000. So it's an interesting sort of interesting period that I hope to do a little more on. Let's go out to the 15-minute break, as I've not moved a single unit, but I'm happy with that. I'll maybe speak to you later. Cheers. Bye.